The topic is the spirituality of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. The guest is Dr. Baldwin. Dr. Baldwin, you know, we're getting ready very soon to celebrate Dr. King's holiday quite soon. And so I think that we've said a lot of things about it over the years, et cetera, but I don't think that we can say too much about how important it is. Let's talk about the upcoming celebration and what you think people ought to be prepared to do this year in terms of trying to honor Dr. Martin Luther King and make this day a reality and make the event itself a reality in all of our lives, not only African Americans, but all of our lives.
Yes, I think given the crises that we face now on a domestic and international level, we should really celebrate Dr. King by focusing on his legacy of spirituality. As you well know, we are in an economic downturn now. There are crises that we are facing internationally. And we need to understand that Dr. King taught us a lot about how to deal with these kinds of domestic and international crises. And one way of dealing with them, of course, is through the prism of spirituality. That is, we have to understand that prayer and meditation are very much a part of how we function in the world. And Dr. King was quite intentional in respecting spirituality across religious boundaries. That is, he respected Islam, he respected Buddhism, he respected Islam, he respected Hinduism, he respected all religions because he felt that they contributed something to our understanding of spirituality. So I think we got to get back to spiritual values as a way of dealing with the crises that confront us. And I think that that taking the King legacy seriously in terms of what he teaches us about spiritual values is very, very important.
As a matter of fact, I think I would certainly have to agree with that, because one of the most important things that I think we find today is that so many people really don't have any real understanding of what we mean when we talk about a spiritual life and spiritual values, spiritual principles, and et cetera. And so I think, in other words, so many folks don't believe that there is a spirit in man.
Exactly, exactly.
And I think that if we can, and I think you've demonstrated that Dr. King certainly agreed that there is a spirit in man.
That's right. That's
and
right.
that Jesus Christ was his leader. There's no doubt about that. Prayer and et cetera. But a lot of folks don't put that much confidence or that much faith in a spiritual life.
That's right, and that's unfortunately because Dr. King always reminded us that life is not about an obsession with the material things of life. We have to also turn to the spiritual. He often talked about relating to his divine companion, who is God. That we have to have a sense of a higher power, that we have to communicate with God through prayer and meditation, and that this in itself can be an empowering force as we face life.
Very good, and it really is. And I think Dr. King more than anyone. As a matter of fact, you mentioned how involved spirituality was in everything that he did, and I often think about the great speech that he made in Washington, D.C. I had a dream speech, and that was all spiritual.
Yeah,
I mean,
you know, if you watch that, if you analyze that speech, it was all about spirituality. Dr. King was driven by a kind of spirituality that made it possible for him to confront the challenges and the realities of the movement and to stand tall. He was never at a point where he was faltering under the pressure of the movement, in part because of the role of prayer and more generally speaking, the role of spirituality in his life.
What did you say in reference to your prayer life, in reference to the speech that he made, that I've been to the mountaintop? How could you deal with anything without dealing with that?
Exactly, exactly. That was a speech peppered with spirituality, if I might make that kind of point. Dr. King was a spiritual leader, and we need to get beyond this idea of seeing him as only a social activist or a civil rights leader, to begin to understand him as a spiritual leader and as a model of spirituality for our time.
And something that we could gain from him simply by studying him and understanding what he was all about.
Exactly. And we get at his spirituality first and foremost through